I'd just spent all my money on a boat. I'd done a 100-mile sea journey from West Loch Harbour to Fort William. I ended up on the road. The tide washed me onto the road right in front of my house, which was a nice way of delivering a boat. It was good from the point of view that all the neighbours had a good laugh anyway. They all saw what happened. And of course, the local fisherman, Roddy McInnes, he came along and said, I see you've got a boat. He said, I like the way you try to park it in your front garden. I said, no, the tide washed it up. I said, I left it on the beach, but he says, yes, I know. And of course, Roddy McInnes is one of the McInnes clan from Barra, which are fishermen for generations and generations. And of course, this strange new Englishman, complete greenbow, must have been a point of fascination for him. He couldn't believe how green and how inexperienced I was. And I asked him, I said, how many creels would you reckon I'd need to be able to make a half-decent income? So he sat back and he said, well, you'd be looking at about 400. And I said, 400? Aye, he says, about 400. And he says, and if you buy a new, he said, it'll cost you 30 quid each. And of course, I just became very deflated, sort of having to part with 400 times £30. In fact, I hadn't got the funds, I hadn't got the money, I'd spent everything on the boat. So I was feeling a bit gloomy, a bit lost. And he looked at me and said, why don't you buy old ones that you could repair yourself? There's lots of them at Mallaig, and there's lots of them around fishing villages that maybe been worse for wear. And I thought, well, it's a good idea. He said, you might get them for £5 or £6 each. So I thought, well, that's a hell of a lot better than £30. So the next morning, the phone went, hello. I says, hello. He says, Roddy here. He said, I've just come across an advert in the paper. There's a man down in Paisley looking to sell 200 creels. Very cheap, but you'll need to make them up yourself. So, oh, great. I said, this is good news. So I phoned this fellow up in Paisley. I told him, explained. New fisherman, I didn't know much about it. And I hadn't got a lot of money. And did he still have the creels available? He said, yes, lad, I come down, he said, and we'll fix you up with... he said, you can have more than 200. He says, I've got, lots more. Just tell me what you want. And so I hired a van from Fort William, went down to Paisley, and turned up at this big warehouse place. And the guy said, right, there's your creels. Well, I was expecting to see all these creels made up. But actually all I saw were tubes and tubes of plastic piping and rolls of netting and pallets about this size. And loads of them. And he said, there you are. And he gave me a quick demonstration. You need to cut 3 of these per creel, bend them over, screw them in, net them, put the holes in, and you've got a good deal. Well, I said, how much do you want for them? So he arranged a price which was very, very favourable on my side. Well, I thought it was anyway. So instead of coming back up the road to Fort William with creels, I came with tubes and battens and spars and bits of net. And I got back to Roddy, and he looked at me and he smiled and he said, well, you've got the makings of some creels there, Alan. You'll need to... You'll take a bit of work, but if you spend time, you'll prosper. You'll make some creels up. So several weeks later, on the very, very last creel, I went round to Roddy and I said, right, what do you think of these? So I had a look at them. He said, not bad, they'll fish. You should be able to catch something with them. Which made me feel absolutely great, you know, because I'd struggled on in a really struggled on. I won't go into details about it, but we got them loaded onto the boat, and Roddy said, well, I can't, I've got to go away. He says, I've got some business. He says, you get yourself some practice just throwing them off the back. And he showed me how to stack them, how to leave the rope, and how to throw them off the back. Throwing the buoy off first, and then the weight, and then the creels, and then letting the rope run, and then the next creel, the rope run. Well, I think I had 20 creels in this fleet. So I was really keen to. I wasn't going to fish, I was just going to practice actually casting them into the water. So set off down the loch, looking around, making sure there was nobody looking, and off with the big buoy and let the rope run, and then off with the weight and let the rope run, and then it come to the first creel. So I threw it in, and then I watched the rope until the next creel was about 20-30 feet in between the creels. Off with the next creel, and then went along and did this 20, might have been 25 creels, I can't remember. And then watched the rope going out, and then off with the big buoy. And I thought, I was expecting to see two buoys floating, but what I saw were 25 creels floating on the top. What I hadn't realised at the time, you have to weight them down with rocks, that type, because it's a cheap means of getting a creel. You put the weight in by putting big stones in the bottom of these creels. Well, Roddy come by and he said, I've just seen 25 creels floating in Loch Linney. He said, are those yours? I said, aye. He said, well, you'll need to go and collect them because they'll go out with the tide. So that was my first introduction to creel fishing. Man, experience. But Roddy, he nearly crippled himself with laughter. He'd never seen anything like that before in his life. And I'm sure it'll have been the talk in the pub for years and years and years to come. You know, years gone by, this will have been a stupid bloody Englishman who threw his creels out and they all floated.